Please note that this episode discusses medical assistance in dying. Please take care while listening.
The last few years, I've seen like a huge trend in women's health, but for so many decades, it was like ignored.
Nothing.
I feel as though right now is my time. My time has finally come.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello, Amanda.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for making it all the way over here to Vancouver from Squamish.
On a rainy day.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Very classic Vancouver day. I'm really excited for our conversation today because I feel like this is something that a lot of people have a lot of questions about, and it's also such a, in my opinion, like esoteric, I don't know, trade sector to be in. But
Yeah.
why don't you tell everybody like what you do?
So I currently have two separate jobs, but I work for, like, my first job is I just recently started a strength training business called Beta Strength and Coaching, and my ideal audience is working with older adults or with women across their lifespan, getting more women into lifting. And yeah, like my primary interest was like the 55 plus kind of demographic. And I have some clients that are in that age demographic, and I just finished like a 4-week series where we focused on a different topic each week. And my other job is I work for a palliative care organization based out of Canmore called Bow Valley Palliative. Go Bow Valley Palliative. I do program evaluation for their organization, so I create different like assessment tools and metrics for them to apply for grants and stuff like that.
What does the word palliative mean exactly?
So palliative is like if you think of any life-limiting diagnosis. So for the longest time, palliative care was more often associated with cancer. A lot of people assume that palliative care means end of life, which end of life care is actually more hospice care. And palliative is when you're, it doesn't necessarily have to be cancer. It could be Parkinson's, MS. So palliative care is really this upstream quality of life care approach to a patient. So yeah, but it's interesting. Like the organization that I work for, we do all of our programs that we offer through the community are free, so they're run by volunteers, and we specialize in like palliative care work, but also so like people who've been diagnosed with a life-limiting illness would approach us, and we would kind of deploy a volunteer to be matched with that person to provide psychosocial emotional supports. And then on the other side is the grief and bereavement. And so some of our volunteers, we train them to be like really effective listeners and be sort of like a bowl to hold someone's grief. And yeah, it's pretty rad organization. Like it's very fulfilling work. So it's kind of, I'm working in the two extremes.
I mean, are they two? It's almost, but they're still like on the same spectrum.
Exactly. They're two extremes that can kind of sandwich together.
Right.
Yeah. My education background is in kinesiology. I have a bachelor's degree in kinesiology and a master's degree in gerontology.
I see. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we'll dive into gerontology for sure because I feel like it's, well, I've been telling people about you because I'm really excited for us to work together in the future, but I feel like a lot of people don't know what the term gerontology even means. So we can totally dive into that. But why don't you give us a little bit of a background on like how you started as a trainer, I guess.
Yeah. When I was doing my kinesiology degree, I didn't really know what I wanted to do with it afterwards. I kind of thought maybe sports massage therapy or something more hands-on. I did work as a trainer after I finished my degree, but then I got a job with the government. I'm originally from the East Coast, so I grew up in New Brunswick, got a job with the government, nice corporate type job, 9 to 5, but like I was pretty bored and not super fulfilled, and I was doing corporate wellness, which was fun, but not really my shtick, and moved to Halifax for various reasons, climbing being one of them.
Of course.
And landed a job with the Canadian Longitudinal Study on Aging, and that's when I learned, I had heard about gerontology before, but I didn't really know I hadn't really been exposed to it much. And when I started looking into graduate programs, Simon Fraser University has a really great program. Shout out to Simon Fraser University, gerontology faculty, really amazing researchers. And so that's what ultimately brought me to the West Coast. And I always kind of wanted to work with older adults, but more in a, quality, like optimizing quality of life. And I think like blending the personal training work with even some of the other work that I do that's maybe more administrative with the palliative care organization has been like super awesome, like super complementary in a way.
Right.
Yeah.
Was there like a certain person or part of your upbringing or childhood that made you more, I don't know, like attracted to working with people like that are older? Because like I'd say that there's a lot of people that I know that shy away from that, you know, like they don't really, first of all, don't want to think about aging, don't want to think about death. That's pretty common in our Western society. But then there's also like, I don't know a lot of people that work or want to necessarily seek out these opportunities to work with like the older generation.
Yeah, I think for the longest time I had shied away from it, or like it never really crossed my mind. I remember my mom's a retired nurse, and I remember her telling me that I should find some sort of position working with older adults. She was like, that's where the future of jobs are. I mean, it's typical East Coast, like, value is find security and stick with that security.
Oh, that's so interesting.
But it wasn't like anyone specifically. Like, I was relatively close with my grandparents, but by the age of, I think, 25, 26, all of my grandparents had died. So I didn't have any grandparents in my life. I remember going to visit my grandparents in long-term care facilities, and I was, like, not
that must have been
into
awful.
it. Yeah, it was just, like, especially, like, as a teenager, that's the last place you want to hang out. It's just, like, you're kind of just doing it as a family member and as a relative.
But, like, the sensory of it.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you remember about that? That must have been, like, really, like...
I think, like, just the smell, the sounds, and the, like, the sights, really, like, triple S. Smell, sounds, and sight. Like,
sure, of course. But it must have just felt like, I don't know, like, what was the general vibe? It must have been kind of, like,
so
sad,
my paternal grandmother had dementia, and so she had, like, a very advanced type of dementia where, you know, I only have memories of her as, like, a really, I mean, I know I'm short, but, like, as a young child. And so I don't have, like, memories of her before she was sort of like wheelchair bound and nonverbal, right? So it kind of like, to me, it made visiting her feel difficult because it just felt like kind of pointless. Like I recognize now she was still the same person that she always was, but I didn't have enough memories of who that person was. And it's interesting because, I guess to go back to your earlier question, really interviewing, like working for the Canadian Longitudinal Study on Aging and interviewing all of these different people who were between the ages actually of 45 and 85 was what like brought out a lot of curiosity for me. So I was like, oh, it's super interesting that this, like, you know, because I would interview at least like 4 or 5 people per day. And these people could range from like 48 to 82 in age range, and sometimes like the older person seemed much more healthy than like a 50-something-year-old, like
mentally or just or both,
across the board,
right?
You know, and this is a very comprehensive research study, so we weren't just taking like interview questions, we were collecting physical data as well. So I was like seeing not necessarily patterns but anecdotal patterns, I would say. And I just, a lot around like a person's attitude and their personality traits seem to fit with how well they were aging. So it just got me like curious, and from that experience is when I started looking into the gerontology programs across Canada. There are more and more gerontology programs. So like this was around 2013 that I started looking into grad schools, and I moved to BC in 2014 and started my master's in 2015. So between 2015 and now, there are more and more research institutes on aging. There are more and more like different types of interdisciplinary faculties kind of coming together and creating their own sort of like either research institute or gerontology type programs. Yeah.
Right.
So it's super interesting to see how that's shifted as well.
Is there a focus specifically in like women's aging that you've seen? Or?
Well, now it's hitting big. It's hitting big, and I mean, I'm probably being somewhat like targeted based on my searches, right? Because I do work as a strength and conditioning coach, specifically with women. Like I've done like a menopause and exercise physiology course with Stacey Sims, but I feel as though the last few years I've seen like a huge trend in women's health, and particularly like in the menopausal stage. But for so many decades, it was like ignored.
Nothing.
And exercise protocols were based on male-specific clinical trials. They didn't often include women. So, yeah, and it's just like we're in a really, I feel as though right now is my time. My time has finally come. And like, I'd say also like going back to our previous conversation around long-term care is that I did end up working in long-term care for 3.5 years in Squamish. And so having had that experience of seeing my grandparents be in those types of facilities as, you know, a young adult, like a teenager into like a young adult, versus I was about late 30s when I started working in long-term care. Having had that background in gerontology really changed my perspective on how I was speaking to the residents who were in our long-term care facility. It often bothered me that I found some of my coworkers would speak to them as though they were like babies, and I'm just like, this is like a mature human.
Yeah, this human's actually more like is wiser than you, like has been around for longer than you.
Yeah, just because they have a dementia diagnosis doesn't mean, or if they're nonverbal, like it doesn't mean that you can speak to them differently or treat them differently necessarily. But yeah, I mean, that was just sort of like an internal ethical battle that I felt was really difficult to deal with at the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think our like Western side of this world definitely treats like our elders a lot differently than like other parts of the world.
Yeah.
And like,
well, depending on the culture, right?
Sure.
You know, I have friends and I've cared for some Squamish Nation elders where it's a very different type of interaction. So yeah, I think there are some like cultural nuances as well. But yeah, I would agree for the most part, it's very much don't really want to talk about it. There's a lot of like fear or like stigma around aging. I mean, we do live in an ageist society.
I mean, it's just so weird because like a lot of like even beauty, like, you know, the beauty sector is like about like anti-aging, like they have anti-aging products.
Big money there.
And I'm just like, what do you mean anti-aging? That's not a thing. Like literally not possible. It's impossible.
Yeah.
So like, do you think a lot of the current research, if you're seeing that it's becoming more prevalent and more common, is it because people are trying to like stop aging?
I think there are different camps of thoughts. Like there are like within the world of like research around aging, there's a focus on longevity, which is what you're kind of talking about. People who are like, I can't remember. I watched this documentary on Netflix about this guy who's like trying to live forever.
Oh,
and
okay.
He's like a Silicon Valley like
I know about this guy.
Multi-billionaire.
Yeah. He's just a guy.
Just a guy who's like, and I actually like I wanted to watch it because I do think it's really interesting to like see the other side of that type of perspective, right?
Sure.
He has just like millions of dollars that he can throw into like all of these different types of therapeutic interventions to like reverse his aging, and he's being very calculated about it. To speak to the beauty side of things, I think it does affect women disproportionately than men.
Of course.
Like, it's okay for men to have salt and pepper hair, have wrinkles. But like for women, it's this completely different story. And so it's so easy to just like internalize that ageist attitude. There's like a very unique type of stereotype, because you're right, everybody will get older. Like you can't turn back the clock.
No.
So I think like with the research that's coming out, I think it just depends on like the type of research that you're looking at. But I know that there's also been some like really interesting documentaries or like articles, books written about how to age well. And so that's very different than longevity. I think like quality versus quantity of life is like a very like interesting, that would be like a multi-hour topic.
Yeah, we don't have multi-hours today.
Exactly. But like quantity versus quality, right? You know, you could like, I think like a vast majority of people our age could in theory live until, I'm assuming that life expectancy will increase to about maybe 90 by the time
I agree.
like we get to that age or so, if not more.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know if I would want to live that long.
That's the thing. I mean, like, how much of this is informed by fear of death?
Well, yeah. And
I mean, like, isn't all of it?
Yeah. And that's where, you know, my experience working in long-term care and my experience even working with a palliative care organization that also, like, facilitates supports for community members who are going through grief, but specifically working in long-term care and being exposed to death, not in a traumatic way, but just as a...
It's just present. It's in the room.
Yeah, it's in the room. You know, it was, I'd say in the 3.5 years that I worked in that facility, I would have known at least 100 people that would have passed.
Wow.
Or died. So it's just like, it kind of becomes this common thread to your day.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times we don't actually even have the time, and this is like not just, I was part of a recreation team, but outside of any of the interdisciplinary teams that we're working within like a long-term care facility, nursing staff, cleaning staff, nutrition staff, everybody's not really well versed to deal with grief and death. Like it wasn't until I like stepped into the grief world that I was like, oh man, like there's a lot of opportunity to be tooling up people in long-term care, like staff in long-term care settings, because we didn't really know how to have conversations with family members around death and dying.
But now they're death doulas.
Oh, that's like a really like, it's interesting because when I was in my position in Canmore with like my physical, like in-person position in Canmore, I met so many people who were interested in volunteering with the organization because they were death doulas.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's like it's interesting to see how popular it's becoming. I think there are more and more things happening around like death cafes and conversations around, there are some conversations kind of popping up around grief and death. Like a very like strong example I would say right now is the movie Come See Me in the Good Light, the Andrea Gibson
I can't wait to see that
documentary. Yeah, it's really great. And I think I was just chatting with a friend yesterday about the film or the documentary, and I saw, like, it was sad, yes, but I saw so much hope and so much joy in the movie, even though the movie was about, like, this life-limiting and, like, diagnosis, and then, like, the quality of life that ensued, but just the love that they have and that they had for each other was so joyful to me. Like, there's so many moments of, like, really nice joy.
Yeah, I really love this documentary called Dying in Oregon, which is about people who do self-assisted suicide. Like, and they follow, I want to say, like 4 or 5 patients and their circumstances.
Yeah.
And, like, they actually film, like, the end of their life.
Yeah.
And it's so sad. Like, it's very emotional, but at the same time, these people are just so I don't know, they're very decided on what they've done or what they've done in their life, and then they're like, I want to go out on my own terms, and like their family is being supportive, and like it's just kind of like brings up like a big conversation like around like,
well, it's that quality versus quantity of life, and I think it brings a lot of so in Canada and BC in particular, medical assistance in dying is what you're referring to, and it is a hot topic because on the one hand you have a lot of religious institutions that are fully against medical assistance in dying. Someone should have to die through like a natural occurrence, right? So whether it's but that's the thing, it could be drawn out for years. And I've seen this in my working in long-term care, where I've seen residents who were nonverbal, non-communicative, wheelchair-bound, like not much quality of life.
Right. And
you have to ask yourself, like, it always just like, I was so interested in, I'm not sure like how, yet at the same time, we did have younger residents who did decide to go through medical assistance in dying. And it was like an interesting thing. I was probably only like 2 months into my position in long-term care when we had someone who was younger than me, who had like a very like rare form of MS. It was quite progressive. And she decided to go through medical assistance in dying. And my coworkers seemed so disrupted by that choice. And I was just like, I was actually kind of psyched for her.
Right.
You know? Because in my conversations with her, that was what she wanted.
Right.
And I think it's a very powerful agency tool to be able to give humans that choice, to be like, wow, I know that I don't have a very high quality of life. Sure. I want to, if there's no hope for progression.
Right. Yeah, that's such a interesting, and I think it's like it's an evolving topic that's really like taken center stage in a lot of ways in the most recent years.
I think it's going to change significantly with the baby boomers.
Yeah, so this is like my question too, because I think that the shift in conversation around aging and the heightened like amount of research that we're seeing right now, I mean, a lot of it must be because there's the generation before us they're passing away now, or very soon, and then everything will be for X, like Gen X and and the millennials. Yeah. So we're kind of facing this big issue. And, like, the death industry in general will be having to deal with, like, the physicality of it, which is there will be a lot of, like, actual bodies. Which, like, I guess I'll have, I'll have somebody on to talk about that maybe soon enough.
I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that, we're seeing more publications. We're seeing more in social media, but, like, I can't tell you how many times I've gone to like the Nesters checkout and seen a magazine with the cover of like how to live well, or, nutrition for living longer, or how to increase your cognitive skills, how to,
everything's marketed that way now.
Yeah, everything is being marketed that way. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that we're seeing that the tail end, like the old tail end of the baby boomers are kind of entering that like late 70s. And so it's just going to get, I think, my estimate is that it's going to get like more pronounced. And my only hope is that we could see some positive changes to, for example, some of the policies and things in place for places like long-term care, because
because it's going to be like in our face so soon. I mean, that would also be my hope. Okay, so when we're talking about let's talk about the quality of life then, in your professional opinion. Like, what are the things that people should be considering when they're thinking about the quality of their life
as they age?
In the context of aging.
I mean, I've certainly read a lot, and I can, attest to the power of community and social networks. So when I mean community, I don't mean, I mean like truly an inner circle of people that you are able to confide in. I remember that these were some of the questions we were asking some of the people in the Canadian Longitudinal Study on Aging.
Yes.
Like we were asking people, like, approximately how many people would you be able to confide in for like a problem that you were having or something like that. So I think having that sense of connectedness and meaning within a community or within like a social network is really important. So it doesn't really matter how many like friends you have on Instagram if you don't actually connect with them in person. It's it's almost irrelevant. But if you have at least a handful of really strong connections that you're able to lean on and care for each other, that's really powerful. In terms of physically, of course, like there's a lot more around nutrition. It's really like seeming to point towards, plant-based diets. I'm not plant-based, but I do actually think that probably like 80% of my diet is plant-based just by default of not being able to purchase a lot of meat.
Yeah, I hear that.
It's just like
economically, it makes more sense to be a vegetarian.
Economically, it's actually like not a terrible thing to be plant-based, but nutritionally, like it's a lot more is like coming out in terms of research around the benefits of being plant-based. I think stress has a really big impact on your internal inflammatory responses and your responses towards physical activity, your immunology as well. So trying to have like as stress-free a life as possible, which is like that's a big one in this day and age. It's really stressful just existing.
Yeah, no kidding.
But yeah, I think finding like coping mechanisms, like healthy coping mechanisms that, they can be physical, but I think it's like important to have like a nice balance. Yeah.
And then staying active, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Every woman should lift weights.
You're like, I'm here to talk about this today.
No, I mean, in all seriousness, I think like, and this also stems from, decades and decades and decades of women being told that, a slim figure is a sexy figure. Right. And so there's a lot of fear associated with women lifting weights. I mean, I see this a lot in the climbing community. People are like, well, I don't want to lift weights because I don't want to get heavy and, I don't want to get bulky. Like those terms are used so frequently. And
it's so crazy to me.
You're not going to magically get bulky.
I know. I'm like, I've tried. It doesn't. Yeah. I've actually like physically tried, and it's
microphone
hard.
drop. You are not going to get bulky even if you try.
Like, I mean, how much protein would you have to consume every day? And it just would be like you'd have to be on like a very, very strict regimen to be able to bulk up.
Yeah. But no, I think like some thinking of strength training as a way to prevent injuries, as a way to like prolong your ability to do activities that you enjoy with your community of choice, with your connected community. And it could be like whatever it is.
That's like two birds, one stone.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, those types of activities, like it can be like any specific, it could be skateboarding, surfing, it could be even like if it was an art-based activity or like a music-based activity, you're still requiring the ability to, have some form of stamina and some strength. So,
sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like across the board. There's lots of factors to consider. I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, so we'll make our way down that list. So if you're thinking about staying active, I think a lot of people have questions around what is the best kind of exercise. There's all these trends. Pilates was huge for a really long time. I mean, still is. Yoga, Tough Mudder.
Those,
those crazy exercises.
Obstacle races.
Trail
running is having a moment.
Sure. So, I guess, if you had to tell, women, this is what you should be focusing on, what would you, I mean, it doesn't have to be a specific exercise, but maybe like the type of exercise, like what you're trying to actually achieve, like for the longevity of your life.
Yeah, for longevity or even for quality of life. I mean, biased, I would say climbing is a really good one because, you know, not only are you getting physical strength, you're having to problem solve.
Yes.
You're more often than not quite in a quite socially connected setting. And so you're not necessarily, I mean, unless you're free soloing, you're, yeah, which, you know, there are people that do that,
Yeah,
of course.
but just, maybe not the first thing that
But
you do
for
as
the-
a climber.
But even the free soloists will want to, like,
Sure.
you know, finish their day off with other climbers.
Oh, no.
And
The climbers are so chatty.
so there is like that community essence to climbing that I do think is like an amazing lifelong activity because unless you're super, I guess, set on being able to achieve specific goals and you're not willing to let go of those goals, I think climbing is one of those perfect sports or perfect activities that you can take with you. You're connected to nature, especially if you're outdoor climbing. There's been a lot of research around activities that are outdoor based.
Right. Yeah, again, like you're kind of
Yeah.
like two birds, one stone kind of thing. Like you're spending time in
Yeah,
nature.
you're killing so many birds actually with
So
one stone.
not killing birds, but yes, killing birds with one stone.
I know.
Like being outside in nature, being in community,
Problem
being physical,
solving. Yeah.
using your brain.
Yeah.
I am also biased as a climber. I
Yeah.
totally get it. But is there something around like it being like low impact or
Yeah.
like maybe like a slower kind of sport that you feel like makes it, because also like you're going to say that maybe weightlifting is also a big one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I think like the other thing with climbing is that it is relatively low impact and you can, the whole basis of climbing is you can climb as hard or as easy as you want.
Right.
When you're getting older, you can maybe shift from a particular type of climbing to something that might be more suitable. Like if you do have like long-standing injuries or like if you have to shift, I think it's just a very adaptable realm. I mean, you could even get into ice climbing like
Yeah.
in your 70s if you wanted to.
I mean, sure, it terrifies me.
I don't know
but
if I would recommend that, but just because I don't find ice climbing very fun, but it is, you know,
it's terrifying and you're cold all the time, so it's not for me.
It's part of the family. Whereas I think, you know, for me, the problem with organized sports, for example, like team-based sports like volleyball, basketball, hockey, is it does require, you know, a lot of scheduling, a lot of programming in order to sort of continue doing it. I mean, of course, you can go like shoot hoops by yourself or like go shoot a hockey puck by yourself.
Sure. But that's not the game.
But if you wanted to actually play, you need to find a league. So
Yeah.
I think doing things like climbing, I'd say like surfing would also be like a really excellent activity. Again, you're really connected with nature. Like ocean is so powerful and so humbling. It's a very physical activity to do. But I think like ultimately, whatever you're deciding to do, it has to be meaningful enough
So you'll keep doing it.
so that you'll keep doing it. So, I mean, if climbing, you know, I could sit here and talk to you about even more benefits about like why climbing would be like beneficial. But if I met a client who was like, well, I really just don't like climbing, then I wouldn't actually encourage them to continue climbing and be
So
like, but what
true.
else would you like to do? Like maybe that person could be into cross-country skiing.
Right.
But I think regardless of what you're doing, I see as, you know, strength training as like a complementary component
I see.
that helps you stay in that sport for a long period of time.
Like regardless of what the sport
Exactly.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have the physical activity part of it, the community part of it. I mean, like, do you? I watched a documentary about blue zones,
Yeah.
and they said that the number one thing for those that don't know, blue zones are areas around the world where there's a huge population of people that are over the age of 100, and they went in and studied these people to see what their lives were like, and one of them was that they all have communities where they're talking to people and seeing the same people all the time, and they feel like they're part of something, and it gives them so much to live for, and they
Purpose.
purpose.
Yeah.
So, like, could you speak a little bit more to that and why you feel like it's, like, so important?
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because if you look at our society now, we're so consumed about retirement. And I see this time and time again. And I'm just mentioning it because retirement to me is such a funny concept because retirement actually originated from Germany towards the mid 20th century or so is when like retirement became more of a concept, because up until then people were dying at around age 70.
I see.
So you would retire at 65 and enjoy your last 5 years.
Oh my God.
So like what we've done is we live in a society that's like, well, I want to retire at 50. But if you're living until you're in your mid 80s,
sure.
potentially 90s, that's another like whole lifetime.
Yeah.
You need to figure out what you want to do. And I've seen so many people just kind of be like, what do I do? So they end up, I find like a lot of the successful retirees are the ones that actually go back into the workforce and work part-time.
Yes.
And they do a job that's maybe something that they never thought that they would do, or that they just do for the pure enjoyment of it.
I always want to think of retirement as having a choice to work. Like, I don't think I'll actually, like, retire. Like, I mean, I like to work, but it's like I want to have the choice. I don't want to have to do it because capitalism is like, you have to do this or you'll die. You know?
Yeah, totally. Totally. So, so I think, like, purpose, can come from a career, can come from different, like, pieces and parts of our lives. It can come from relationships. It can come from an activity that you do. It can come from a group that you're a part of. Like a lot of people will, like, the nice thing about retirement is a lot of people do get into volunteering and giving back to their community if there are opportunities to do that where they live. But like, it's just important to kind of like keep that sense of purpose. And I think, like, again, I see so many people who are just grinding it out and they're like, well, yeah, I'm going to retire when I'm like 50 or 60. And it's just like, but why?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think it definitely was like a trend for a while.
Yeah.
Like the FIRE movement or whatever, which is, I don't even, what was it? It was something about like retiring at like as early as possible. I can't remember like what the acronym stands for exactly. But I don't know what the purpose was. I think it was potentially for my generation, it was just to escape capitalism, right?
Yeah.
Like it was like, oh, I just don't want to think about having to like be in the rat race for forever.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that what you're saying is that like retirement without purpose is kind of like for what, right?
It's kind of boring.
It's kind of boring. Like, why would you do that? No, I totally get that. Yeah. So you're saying that community important because then purpose is inherently created by community. You're contributing to a group of people.
And I think whether a lot of people like to admit it or not, a lot of people are in professions where their community is actually their coworkers or their colleagues. And so it's so funny because you can totally see like certain instances where like someone will just be like, I can't wait to retire, and they're like, well, who do I hang out with now?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
So in your experience of working with people that are much older, did they recognize that like community is like a huge part of like what keeps them going? Like they're really like craving that connection?
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough that I had like a wealth of information at my fingertips, when I was working in long-term care, because my job was to connect with the residents. My job was to like I was like sometimes call myself like an entertainer, because recreation in long-term care has not changed in recent decades. So it's still like the same, you bring residents to like a game of bingo, which I hate. I hate bingo. It turns the sweetest ladies into real B-words.
They just what competitive?
They're just like, there's something about the bingo environment that just like shifts someone.
It's toxic.
It's just like, it's so toxic. we need to like shift that culture,
Sure.
if anything. If anyone's listening and they can shift that culture. But I would have like very honest conversations with people about their lives, and they often would share stories about things that they've done. Mm-hmm. So like not accomplishments, but places they'd visited. They would often talk to me about their families.
Sure.
Or really close friends. Like I had, some residents who maybe had never married, but they had like just very close friendships with specific people, or the adventures that they had done. And I'm not talking like backcountry skiing, but it's just like whatever adventure was to them. Mm-hmm. That's what they would often be like most excited to talk to me about. Like none of the residents would ever talk to me about like, I'm so glad I invested in so-and-so, or, at the end of their lives, they're just like,
right.
They just kind of want, I think you end up being able to like really hone in on what's truly important. And it sounds cliche because it gets repeated, but it seems as though like everybody just continuously forgets about it. But it's like, it is those connections that you make in life, and the loves that you've loved, and the things that you've done that bring a lot of joy and meaning towards the end of your life. It's, yeah.
Yeah, that is the most important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
And good food.
That's the next thing, right? So
I think that was one of the hardest things to see, was like the meals that you would get in long-term care. And you think about, you have this independence as just a regular like 30 plus or like 40 plus year old to go home and make your own meal. Whereas you have to, like, if you're in a long-term care facility, you have to eat, like, maybe you might have two choices of what you eat for dinner or for like any meal.
Sure.
The pandemic was just like, I kind of thought the pandemic was just going to like cause this huge disruption and like basically bring about all of these positive changes into like long-term care facilities. And it was like the hot news for the first 2 months of the pandemic, and then like it just trickled out, and there's not really much mention about, the quality of care, like improvements. Right. And I think people who are working in there are just doing their absolute best, but a lot of things need to shift.
Sure.
And that would be a separate 4 or 5 hour.
Right. I mean, like the funding and all that.
Yeah.
That's a lot. I love the book, Being Mortal.
Yeah.
God, I love that book.
It's super good.
It's really good. Highly recommend. What's interesting is also that, did you ever hear from any of the residents about, like, regrets around not having kids or anything like that? Because I feel like our generation, obviously, there's, like, a huge shift of a lot of people that are like, you know what, I'm good. I don't have no kids. Like, also, it's, like, economically, and, climate change-wise, a lot of us are kind of like, I don't know if I want to have kids. But then, like, one of my closest neighbors, who's 86, she never had kids, and she was like, I regret not having kids. And I was just curious, like, the general, like, sentiment maybe of your residents. Number one, because there's this thought like, oh, if I don't have kids, then no one will take care of me when I'm older. Yeah. And then number two is like wanting that connection and wanting that community when you're older, and then our society not necessarily prioritizing or like putting a lot of, I don't know, we don't really treasure our elders as much.
Yeah, we don't put a lot of time capital.
Right.
Which was another shift that I saw in the pandemic.
Okay.
It was like all of a sudden, all of these people who had parents in long-term care had all the time in the world, and that's all they wanted to do. So when things were like in lockdown, it was just like, yeah, let's FaceTime. And so like my job during the pandemic and my team's job, we were just doing all sorts of like coordinating Zoom, FaceTime. I mean, if you can imagine the logistics of trying to like navigate families from across the country, sometimes across the world, trying to like FaceTime. There was such a rush to spend time and to be present with their loved one who was in long-term care. And again, I saw that it's time capital, right?
Sure.
I saw that totally drop off as things were like opening up.
Right.
And there was no more rush to get in and visit their loved one. And that made me like a little bit sad. And I think it is the reality that we all lead very busy lives. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question about like regrets around having kids, I think your point about, who is going to look after me when I'm older and the choices around community and who you surround yourself with, I think it's completely possible to rely on friends and close community who aren't blood family or like, like in the LGBTQ community, it's just like you often see people who have been so far disconnected from their families that their friend group really becomes their family. And so I think in a lot of ways, I don't recollect having many conversations with residents who were like, I regret not having kids. I think a lot of the residents had children.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah.
I'm just curious around like sort of the direction that we're going to take as a society, because now we're in a reality where most people aren't having kids. So I think a lot of us are like, what are we going to do like when we're old? And
we're all going to choose medical assistance in dying.
Dark.
It's an easy way.
Dark future. I mean, I think like community is becoming a lot more talked about in terms of like, oh, how do we find alternative ways to live out the end of our lives, or the golden years of our lives,
For sure.
In a way that isn't like I birthed this person, so they're obligated to take care of me. And like my hope as well as yours is probably that it just gets better, because more people are going to be faced with it.
But I also think like there are intricate differences and difficulties with even just having a family dynamic as well. Even if you have a child, it doesn't mean that child is going to like you.
I know. And it's like this obligation that they like need to take care. I mean, like that's just, you're really gambling there if you're thinking that they're actually going to, right?
Yeah, it's difficult. Like you wouldn't want to have that as a forethought of why you would want to have children. I would caution people, but I certainly saw family dynamics where there were just, especially when there are multiple siblings involved, it gets like pretty complex, especially when you're talking about health decisions. Like you're talking about health decisions, what to do with your parent who's in care or even living in the community but needs care. Like there's so many complex decisions that come into play. And then you might have like one adult child of that person who's like, well, I don't care what you do, or like so it's I think it's complex either way.
Sure. Yeah, so I think like the focus is going to be very much on like, I mean, like, I think we're becoming increasingly isolated as people, like social media technology. It's just, it's kind of the way that things are going. But as we get older, I wonder if there's going to be more of like a shift towards like, oh, we need connection because we don't have much else to kind of like lean on.
Yeah. Hopefully not robots. Like
my
mind just goes to like AI and robots. And, and there's interesting work being done like in the field of gerontology around like the use of robotic pets or the use of robotic companions in long-term care facilities. Like that's a whole other like world within a world that's quite like interesting. We had robotic pets and it was weird,
I'm sure,
but I mean for some residents it was quite soothing. And it's not that you would want any robotics to replace human connection, because ultimately I'm sure any of the residents would have rather hung out with any staff member than a robotic pet. But I see your point. I think like the ways, there's no one size fits all solution to being able to create community or being able to create connection. I think like through grassroots organizations that intentionally try to create community is like just like a spectacular start.
Sure.
So like things that you do with the Bad Academy are like potentially creating those connections, potentially creating those micro communities. And, you know, throughout our life course, you never know which community is going to stick. Like I find as though there are often communities that are kind of there for a season, there for a reason, that saying. So, but I think in general, I just wish that people would like be more open to talking to strangers. That's like the world I want to live in, where you're, you know, you're in a big city and people are just more open. Like I see this in more like, or I guess less developed countries that I've been to, where it's just like people seem to be a little bit more open to like talking to strangers about like,
Sure.
oh, where are you from? Or, you know.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's again, it's like us having this tunnel vision of just looking at our phones and like not wanting to speak to people. And yeah, that small town vibe.
Yeah.
It's like not really present a lot of the times when you're like in a metropolitan city, especially like Vancouver.
Yeah.
Okay, so like if someone was trying to get into gerontology, like how would you describe like the areas of what it is? Because it sounds like there's a lot of science involved. There's a lot of like psychology involved.
Yeah.
Like what is it like studying gerontology?
Yeah, so ideally you would have, I mean, some universities have like a major or a minor in gerontology. So you could be like an engineering student, for example, and maybe become like interested in gerontology, and you end up doing a master's degree or a postgraduate degree, maybe looking at technology that can help improve the lives of older adults or help improve the lives of people as they age. And so gerontology really is like very multidisciplinary.
Yeah.
The more traditional fields that have like been tightly merged with gerontology in the past have been things like nursing, social work. I don't know, like those are like the big ones, right? Because it's more
right.
That's just how society has been constructed. But now there's just like lots of interesting opportunities for people in architecture.
Sure.
So people designing homes that are age-friendly, meaning that like you can age well in that home. There are no like barriers to staying at home for a long period of time. So you could be like even like an architect or an interior designer or like someone doing that kind of work, even like a carpenter who's doing like age-specific modifications.
Interesting.
Occupational therapists.
Right.
Yeah, there's like the whole gamut.
Yeah, you can apply
and like
it to...
even technology.
Yeah, totally. I think
Right?
that's huge.
Yeah.
That's going to be like probably more common as we move forward.
And if you think about it, there aren't a lot of apps for older adults.
Well, I mean, our phones are so small. Like, I mean, like...
They're so small, but at the same time, like, you can have an app on an iPad or, you know, and... but I think it is a field that's, like, it's growing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, even as, like, an older millennial, like, I... Like, using TikTok versus Instagram, the interface of TikTok doesn't, like... It just, like, doesn't work.
I've never used TikTok, so I don't even know.
My brain just, like, is, like, overloaded when I look at it. And it's because, like,
I'm glad I don't have to use it.
I'm just, like, it's very, like, apparent to me, like, what generation I am when I look at those two apps because I'm, like...
Hilarious.
Yeah, because, like, and they're not too far apart, you know? Like, they're very similar apps, but for me, I'm, like, I find this one so much easier to use and so much less... assaulting than this other one, but then I know so many people that really love TikTok, so I'm just kind of like, wow, this is probably what it's gonna feel like, you know. So I wonder if like there's a huge there'll be a huge shift as like our generation gets older around technology and
exactly, and like different like quality of life or different like lifestyle apps, for example, like a step counter or you know
right, of course.
There's all sorts of like fitness apps, but again, there aren't very many that are like specifically directed to older adults or like specifically marketed to older adults.
But like you said before, there's like a lot of products now that are being targeted specifically towards like I think women that are older, because women have so much buying power in the world, and now that millennials are entering this age where they're like starting to experience menopause and all these things.
Yeah.
It's just really interesting to me to see that shift. I guess you could also say that someone could study women's studies with like a minor in gerontology and then like be expert at like older women. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about like the intersection of like feminism and gerontology?
It's an interesting one. I did take like a minorities and healthy aging class when I was in grad school. I think a lot of the theory is translatable because especially until we're no longer like an ageist society, we portray and look to older adults as though they're less than.
Yes.
And they're less valued. You know, there's not as much glitz and glamour, like let's just call it that, for older adults. And so when it comes to sexuality, even there still isn't a ton of research. It's still kind of taboo to think about like older adults having sex or like older adults maybe coming out of the closet. So I think feminist theory fits really well into the gerontology world because like gerontologists tend to, I mean, unless you're like purely studying demographics and like the quantitative side of things, aims to look at a very macro and like life course perspective oftentimes of an individual rather than just like, well, this is an old person.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's just like, I don't know, feminism obviously has shifted so much over the past few decades. And now I think that there's a huge conversation around age and aging, especially with like plastic surgery.
Yeah.
Advances in plastic surgery, all these, a lot of science being dedicated towards vanity. I feel that there's going to become like this point where we're like thinking like, okay, we're feminists, but we need to be thinking also about like the age aspect of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I know people who are younger than me who've had plastic surgery or who've had modifications of some sort.
Yeah, which is their choice.
Yeah. So I mean, I see it as, you know, it is like someone's choice because I think ultimately like what makes you feel confident and comfortable in your body is, you know, I think people should have the agency to do that. But the hard part or the tricky part is when it's coming externally.
Yes.
As a pressure or a source of pressure. And so, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I've definitely gone to some hairdressers where I've just wanted like partial foils. And they're like, well, do you want me to cover all your grays? And I'm like, no, like I said partial foils because I need to have like texture in my hair. My hair is so fine, but you don't need, like, I don't want you to cover my grays. That's
You're like, I like it. Leave it.
Yeah, like leave some there. It's fine. And it'll be fine. And I think it can be very consuming if you're just like not from a purchasing, but it like emotionally consuming as well. If you're constantly looking to, for that gratification externally and those modifications kind of can like come through and
I feel like as a woman, my experience, and I know a lot of women that I know have this experience, you just feel gaslit when you do things like when you put on makeup or when you're like making these changes. You're like, is it me or is it patriarchy that is making me do this thing? So you second guess all of the things that make you feel good, but then also like, does it make you feel good, or have you been told that that's what's going to make you feel good? And like that's, I think like the conversation around aging has really messed with our heads because
100%.
Because we're like, oh, you're only valuable to society when you're young and hot and, you know, can bear children.
Yeah.
And then there's not a lot of conversation around like, okay, well, what does that mean when we're all older women? But feminists really, really like, I mean, generally I'd say value older women quite a bit.
Well, and it's interesting coming from, like, again, a long-term care lens, because, you know, I certainly knew residents who would get their hair done every week. They would either get, perms. They would get, like, perms, or they would get their curler set.
Sure.
But at the same time, I can't tell you how many times I would, like, look at a resident who is just, like, full of wrinkles, or, you know, what you would maybe quote unquote not consider beautiful.
Sure.
And I would just, like, have, like, a lovely conversation with that person and be like, you are so beautiful.
Yeah.
But I don't think that a lot of people are exposed to that. So therein lies part of the problem, is there's this kind of, like, disconnect, because unless you have, like, regular contact with a grandparent or with someone who's in their 80s or 90s that you just have, like, access to, you don't get that, like, special privilege access to, like, be exposed to that beauty and that,
right, like a different kind of beauty that isn't so, like, prevalent in pop culture.
Yeah, like the manicured filters that you would have and stuff like that. And I think, like I said, I would be like, oh man, like, this person is so beautiful. And, like, same with men too, right? Because men can also probably go through some form of, you know, oh, like, I don't like the way I look, but yeah, again, it's like an exposure, and it's like, it's what your experiences kind of help teach you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking to gerontology. I feel like it's such, like you said, it's like there's so much to know about it, and it's so, like, widespread. Like, there's just so much that it touches and could touch. And so, like, so fascinating to know how it's being applied. We're going to go into, like, a lightning round now of questions. Lightning round, I mean, I asked them quite slow, so I feel like it's not really that fast, but they're just more, like, kind of, like, rapid fire. There's no, like, natural progression into why I'm asking these questions.
Okay.
I always ask all my guests this question, but for you, this is a funny one. What's been your favorite age?
Oh, right now.
Yeah. Every person, almost every single person that we've had.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say right now, I'm 42. I am still pushing myself really hard and climbing, and not just, like, climbing, but bouldering specifically. Just because I'm not a very good sport climber. And I'm only now learning how to try climb. So maybe there's hope that I could be, like, a really strong tri climber. But I think, I feel very lucky that I have a lot of knowledge base to go off of, and that influences my decisions to, like, what I do, who I spend time with. And so, I'd say for me, like, it's still, right now.
Nice.
Yeah.
What's the best part of being a woman in your industry?
I mean, like I said earlier, I feel like the timing is hitting it right for me right now. Especially, like, I just recently started my training business. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of my clients are female. I do have a few clients who are older, but I've been busy, and I haven't, it's been like, you know, maybe 3 months, not even. And I've been busy, and it's cool.
It must be rewarding to be, like, working with, like, older women, and then you being a woman yourself. There must be some kind of, like, I mean, like, when I spend time with older women, it's like there's still a connection.
Oh, for sure.
And there's, like, an unspoken kind of, like, there's an unspoken connection that you have with these women that would be different, I guess.
And I push them and make them sweat.
Yeah, totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When I ran my 55 plus group, it was 4 weeks in a row, and we met once a week. And I mean, I had them deadlifting the first week. I was like, we're not going to be doing aerobics or, like, really light lifting stuff. We're going to actually, like, I'm going to teach you how to properly lift, and then we're going to practice.
Yeah.
And so, having that, seeing that group, which were primarily women. There were 2 men, 2 token men. And one was, like, a husband. So I think he was just, like, strong-armed into going. But I think just
for his own good, though.
Yeah. And I just think there's there's a lot of, it felt really nice to see like the progression and the confidence and even just the group dynamics, because it was a small group, but it was like, I could tell that people were feeling more confident in their movements. Yeah. But I mean, I have a client who's 15.
Wow.
And it's super cool to work with her because I don't really hang out with teenagers a lot. I guess I hang out with the other end of the spectrum.
Yeah, that must be funny.
So I'm just like, Taylor Swift.
Totally. I know who that is. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know if like gerontology itself is like more male dominated or female dominated?
Tends to be like more.
Maybe it's because I actually I don't think I looked this up before, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'd say like more women
Okay.
had previously been interested in the field because, again, like for maybe the last few decades, it's primarily been like nursing or social work, which are primarily like women dominant job field or like fields of employment. But now with like the introduction of like, technology, like the technology and architecture piece is a huge one. Yeah, I think there are more and more men getting interested in gerontology.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, because my next question is like, what's the worst part of being a woman in your industry? And I'm just kind of curious, like if there's already a lot of women, then, but I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because it's like, again, it's such a broad field that you can kind of carve out your own niche.
Yeah, but like in your experience, I guess, like in your own personal experience.
I mean, I can go back to my experience working in long-term care where it was primarily women working in that field, like all of the nursing staff, I mean, not 100%, but the vast majority. Nursing staff, healthcare aides, the nutrition aides, so like the people who are serving the food, even a lot of the cleaners were women. So it did feel like quite female heavy. And I mean, even within long-term care, you're often going to get like a higher ratio of women than men.
Sure.
As residents.
Right.
So I don't know what the worst part about it would be. Maybe just,
maybe being pigeonholed.
The cat fights. Yeah. Cat fights.
Cat fights.
The gossip.
The gossip.
The sip. Yeah.
That's funny. What's the number one thing people ask about what you do when they find out that you're a gerontologist?
What's gerontology?
They don't even know what it is. Yeah.
Sometimes they're like, are you a doctor then? Like because it is like a relatively new field and it's not super common. But like I said, even from when I started, it's progressed quite a bit. And so I think a lot more people are hearing the word gerontology.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. But people ask me like, what is it again? Like they just like ask me. They just don't really know what it is.
Yeah, that's exciting though.
Yeah.
So interesting, Michelle.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Last question is, if you had 5 minutes to teach someone something about your job, what would you teach them? Like, I guess like the nugget that you want people to kind of like take away from what you know about gerontology.
As a field, or like what I'm currently doing now?
I think what you're doing now is more interesting, like what your lived experience is, I suppose.
Yeah. I think being open to experiences and being open to conversations is like pretty key. Yeah. I mean, that's like, I would want that for all humankind, but like particularly in this field, especially if you're like wanting to work with older adults, exposing yourself to older adults, like not being afraid to maybe like volunteer at a hospice or being able to volunteer in a long-term care facility or being able to volunteer with a seniors organization. Like there are actually lots of opportunities to be like a volunteer or be exposed to that age demographic without it being, because I feel like right now, like the hard part is I feel like there's like this kind of like financial distancing being introduced with like the dialogue of like boomers versus, different generations. And I often have a hard time with that because it's like not all baby boomers are like wealthy. And not all But I think I would hope that wouldn't prevent someone to like exposing themselves or like engaging in experiences where they might just have a conversation with someone who's in their 80s or 90s.
Yeah, I really love that because it's like it's really, it does open your eyes to so much more if you have cross-generational interactions, and like you could probably learn so much about yourself, learn so much about where your life is going.
Yeah.
And also, like, be a friend to somebody that's not like you.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that you tied in the word intergenerational, because I think, again, we grow up in, like, these, especially in the sporting world, you're, like, in specific age categories. And then as you're an adult, you don't have this capacity to, like, you know, maybe join a specific age group, and then it just kind of continues along that line. And I think, like, there are really, like, cool opportunities for intergenerational, like, programming. And I think that's another, you know, even sub-world within gerontology is, like, how do you foster and create these types of programs?
We're going to work on that,
Yeah.
you and me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today, Michelle. It was so nice
Thanks,
speaking
Amanda.
to you.
Yeah, it was awesome.
All right, thanks. Stay bad.